Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Jennifer. I'm a former flight attendant turned travel agency owner of Pine to Palm Travel. Today, we are going to try a different style of video than what I've done on my channel before. My favorite YouTube videos are actually reaction videos, and I watch reaction videos on all sorts of things. I just love the community that's behind it, and it's like you're watching these YouTubers with friends. Of course, I'm always supportive of the actual YouTuber that they're also reacting to. I thought this would be a really fun concept to kind of bring over to the travel side. I don't know anyone that's really doing it for the travel type videos, and I think it could bring up a ton of topics that we should be discussing. We'll be able to look at some really cool destinations with each other. So let's get into our first reaction. I am today going to be reacting to travel channel Glitters and Lasers Adventures. She has a main YouTube channel, I think, that follows her weight loss journey. I'm not super familiar with her in that channel, which is why I think it'd be fun to react to her and learn about her. She is just promoting travel, especially if you are plus size. I think that is a really cool concept and very interesting topic of discussion, something that maybe people aren't necessarily comfortable talking about. As a travel agent, I want clients to be as comfortable as possible. So talking about topics like this is super important, especially if it's something that's going to help you have a better travel experience, or maybe you can learn something from this. It can be beneficial. I will have her channel and the video, everything linked in the description below. So please go check her out. Again, I was a former flight attendant, so I have a ton of experience in the travel industry. I worked for an airline for over 6 years in multiple different positions for the airline. Actually, I mainly was a flight attendant. I also did some work at the gates, ticketing counter, over the phone type stuff. That is my background with that. Then I own my own travel agency, and we help travelers every day travel across the world. We are going to take a look at her video, How I Travel Stress-Free as a Plus Size Woman, My Secrets Revealed. So let's go ahead and watch.
So this is our first ever video for our Glitter and Lasers Adventures channel, and I'm super—
Yeah, real quick, she just made this channel as well, so this is a newer channel, so it'll be kind of fun that we're starting this adventure with her, and maybe we'll look at other videos that she's done as well. That's why she's saying it's new.
super excited because I'm going to be answering all your burning questions about travel. So I gathered all the questions you guys have asked me over the years about travel, put them together, and created a foolproof guide to traveling in a bigger body. I figured this was the best way to kick this channel off, and also it becomes a resource. So whenever anybody has questions about these very things, I have them addressed in this video first and foremost, because I want to show you that everybody can see the world.
And that is such a good message too. Everybody can see the world. There are definitely some challenges with that and restrictions, which is why someone that is plus size and actually traveling herself can give great advice, and why getting the help of some travel professionals, such as a travel agent, to really know the ins and outs of the actual vacation that you're going on or the trip and the logistics of that, make it as smooth as possible. We help with all kinds of things. I don't know if anyone's ever thought about that, but as travel agents, we help with things exactly like this.
Now, before I get into all my tips and tricks for traveling, I want to make sure that you know to subscribe, like, comment, hit the notification bell. We are a new channel and we are doing this all for free right now, so we would really appreciate any love you can throw our way. So let's start at the very beginning. And this is a phrase you're going to hear me say a lot throughout this video, is that planning is key.
Planning is key. This is so true. Even if you are the type that want to go on an adventure and have it be wherever the destination takes you, that's what you want to do. You want to discover it when you get there and plan as you get there. In my belief, there needs to be some sort of planning behind it, even if you're planning to have open and free time. And that's essentially if you want to be stress-free. If you want to go all chaotic and just have a crazy adventure, no planning involved. Even those who go to the airport and decide on a flight at the airport and then go to that destination, they are packing. They're packing for many different scenarios. That's still part of the planning process. So I really don't think you can travel, unless someone can prove me wrong here, that there's absolutely zero planning that goes into any type of traveling.
Planning to me is the most important part, because it will greatly affect whether you have a good trip or a bad trip. And that's not because you're planning, adventures, that you can't change your plans once you're in country, but it's gonna just give you that sense of comfort. And I think a lot of our discomfort in traveling in bigger bodies really is more due to our anxiety than the actual country itself not being accessible. And that's been my personal experience.
Absolutely agree with that. I didn't mean to cut her off, but that is so true. It's the anxiety it builds up in people, which is a big part of that, but also the unknown. This really can apply to anybody that's traveling. The unknown is what really makes people nervous. And the more that you know and you know what to expect, then the less stressful this experience can be.
And I think that when I talk to other travelers, it's similar. Sure, there's always going to be an idiot that says something to you. And that doesn't matter what country, state, or region you are in, there will always be someone because there's always someone in the world. But you have to make the choice to not listen to that one person and instead focus on all the amazing things that are around you.
That is also true. Being in your own country, there's going to be idiots that say stuff to you. One of my biggest experiences with this is being in Korea. Someone didn't like my mom's blonde hair and was like spitting at us on the sidewalk and motioning for us to go walk on the other side of the sidewalk. Doesn't matter. There's going to be people just acting that way towards you. I think anywhere you go, it's how you respond is the biggest thing as well, and the energy that you're putting out to people. I fully believe that even if you're not speaking the same language and come from different backgrounds, the energy you're giving out to people, what you're going to receive too. Again, anyone and anybody is going to experience that. I definitely can see how being plus size, it's a little bit more nerve-wracking or more on your mind as you're traveling too.
Let's talk about planning. First, let's start with the hardest thing, planning your flight. Now, I probably get more questions about flying than I do anything else. And the first thing I'm gonna say is there is a ton of resources out there about plane seats, about armrests, about all the different information about the plane. Everything you need to know to decide whether you need one seat or two seats, whether you'd be more comfortable in economy or business class. Personally, I buy two seats, and I'll tell you why I do. Sometimes I fit fine, but in the rare chance that I don't want to deal with it. I don't want the stress. So I've just decided for my mental health, two economy seats is the best way to travel for me. I will say if you're flying Southwest and purchase two seats, they will actually credit you the second seat back once you arrive at your destination. You just need to call in. All other airlines, it's kind of a...
So that is something that has been talked about a lot in the travel industry. I will be honest, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that with Southwest, only because as a flight attendant, I've seen people of many different body types and things like that should maybe also buy a second seat or have different options for them that don't at all have to do with weight, that don't have that opportunity. For example, someone who is tall, they still have to pay extra for legroom or an upgraded seat or something like that. And being tall is really something that someone can't control at all. And I've seen some very tall people struggle on flights. That is like a whole other topic on its own. I guess Southwest does that. I'll be honest with you, I don't normally book Southwest for clients unless they specifically request it. Especially, I would not recommend it if you are very concerned about your seat and where you're sitting on the aircraft. Now, not all travel agencies book airfare. My travel agency does book airfare just because of my knowledge behind the airline industry and booking airline tickets and all of that. There's a lot that goes into it, and I don't know if people know that travel agents don't make any commission on domestic flights at all. There's not a ton in it for travel agents, to be honest. If you're someone that is concerned about seating arrangements, there are different places on the aircraft that if you need extra space, there are better places for you. That is something that a travel agent can help you with. There are tons of online resources, of course. I think like Seat Guru is like one of the top ones people use, but there are like bulkhead seats. Some people think like, oh, those are going to be better. They're not always. Even with the exit row, if you need a seatbelt extension, you can't sit in the exit row. The bulkhead seats and some seats don't. The armrests don't go up, and they actually they're more narrow because of that. So that wouldn't be as comfortable for a lot of people. I've experienced this being a flight attendant. People get on the plane and the seat does not work for them, and it's complete chaos to try to switch it all around. Even sitting, like she said, she sits in economy. Being in first class doesn't necessarily mean that you have more space, especially being a plus size person. The seats are normally separated. So if she's in economy and can buy two seats, she's having a lot more space because she can put an armrest up and then essentially kind of turn two seats into one more comfortably than buying a first class seat because then there's a center console between each seat and you don't have that space actually. So it's little things like that. I think it's a good thing she brings it up because some people just automatically think, oh, you need to book a first class seat, but that's not always going to be the more comfortable option for you.
Different process depending on the airline, but typically it's you book your ticket and then you call the airline and book the secondary ticket for the extra seat.
Again, your travel agent will do that for you if you have a travel agent that's booking airfare.
Some of them also have codes like EXST as your middle name to do that as well on your own. So it's just going to depend on which airline you choose to fly and where you're headed. But research the seats. Now, the sites I like to use to research are Seat Guru, and then also the airlines themselves have tons of details about their aircrafts. Personally, I think United's are the most robust. They'll tell you the pitch, they'll tell you the width, and they'll also tell you whether the armrests go up on each side. Now, the armrests are important because if you're in between or maybe you don't have money to spring for an extra seat, you can always purchase an aisle seat with an armrest that goes up. It's gonna give you a little bit more room. You're gonna have to have the bar down when you take off and when you land, but for the rest of your flight, that can be up and give you a little bit more comfort.
Oh, okay, she's right, but as a former flight attendant, this makes me cringe a lot because a lot of times people think that the aisle becomes part of their seat and there's limbs and body parts and stuff that just pour out into the aisle like it's an extended seat for them, and that should not be the case. And this is just coming from like someone with the background in it, walking up and down airplane aisles constantly, it becomes a major trip hazard. It becomes very uncomfortable for you to constantly have a flight attendant running into you. It's very uncomfortable for the flight attendant because they don't want to be running into you. Safety issues for sure. If a flight attendant needs to run up and down the aisle because of a medical emergency, security emergency, something like that, and you're blocking the aisle, that is also not good. But like, again, I kind of like see where she's coming from. If you can like lean out a little bit more, then you might be more comfortable. But just as a flight attendant, that makes me cringe. I've also tripped and have totally fell over people that are sprawled out in the aisle. The carts for beverages and snacks hit people all the time that are leaning out in the aisle. I just would not recommend that tip that she's giving. If anything, maybe book the window seat and you have a little bit more space. You can lean on the window and move over. But she's right though, like the armrest does have to be down for takeoff and landing. So if you can't sit with the armrest down anyways, then that the aisle seat's not an option for you. It's a double-edged sword, but coming from a flight attendant perspective, like that is not a good idea.
First and foremost, plan what seat you get on the airplane so it's not a surprise when you get there. Next, you got to plan your activities. And all I'm going to say is know your boundaries. I think a lot of people get overambitious on holiday and they end up ruining their vacation by doing something that's just a little bit out of their comfort zone. I am chronically doing this to myself, so I have no room to talk, but sometimes I'm on vacation to push myself, so it just depends on what you're going for.
I love this tip from her because, and again, this can kind of be applied to anybody, especially if you're someone that's not super active and then you go on a super active trip, you're going to be struggling and it's going to suck. And then again, like, are you going to try to push yourself a little bit more or are you wanting to relax and whatnot? But again, this is really, really good advice and you should be aware of your boundaries. If you're working with a travel agent, make your travel agent aware of your boundaries and be honest. That's the biggest thing. Be honest with yourself, be honest with the people that you're traveling with. And that is just going to help avoid many different situations that you would not want to be in, especially if you get hurt or so sore that you like can't do an activity for the next day. No one wants to deal with going to a hospital or doctor's office on their vacation.
Also look for things like weight limits and things that are required on trips. I will say some of the weight limits are literally just a proxy for abilities. So the example I always give people is I wanted to go snorkeling when I was in Belize and I saw that there was a weight limit of like 250 pounds. And I was like, that seems a little bizarre. You don't need to like be a certain weight to snorkel. You just need to know how to swim. So I called the service and I inquired about the weight limit and they said, well, we have a little bit of a concern because we've had trouble with people not being able to get on the boat afterwards. So they had no problem what weight you were. They were just creating a proxy weight to prevent the situation that happened, which is where they couldn't get the woman back on the boat. So again, here's where knowing your abilities and I knowing I have like pretty strong upper arm strength, that's not going to be an issue for me. even though I'm over their weight limit.
The only thing I have to say about that is, yeah, that's true. You can call and see why the weight limit is there, but usually a reason that there's a weight limit, like snorkeling and being able to pull yourself back up onto the boat after you've been swimming around, so you're already tired, and then you don't know. I've been on a boat, an actual snorkeling excursion where the water got really rough towards the end of it, and pulling yourself on, anyone struggled with it. It was hard. Like the people had to physically pull us out of the water. Like it was rough, and we maybe shouldn't have been snorkeling, but like the conditions kind of changed while we were out there. Yes, you can ask questions about it for sure, but just know that they are there for a reason. And if there's other options that you can choose from, maybe do those. But if it's something you really want to do, and she said, I guess, that she can pull herself onto the boat, just be aware that there are things there for a reason. And usually, in my experience with travel, when there's laws and rules surrounding stuff, it's because someone has gotten seriously hurt, someone's been sued and lost a lot of money over a certain situation, or death has occurred and there's new rules and laws around that. Just be aware that the rules and laws exist for
I'm
a
going to be
reason.
fine on that activity. So things to think about when you're planning, and also always call the place to find out more information. Just because it says it's not going to work for you doesn't mean it's actually not going to. If you really want to do it, you probably can find a way to do it if you call and have a discussion with them. I always like to, as like another level of this, is to plan activities I just like have to see and do, and activities that would be nice to do. That way, if I push myself on an activity that I really wanted to do, I can opt to have a lazy rest of the day. Sometimes people go on trips and they pack way too much in, and what ends up happening is they end up getting hurt, or they end up not actually enjoying their trip. So as a bigger lady, sometimes I don't think about how humidity and altitude and other things might affect me. And since sometimes you don't really know those things until you're in the location, that's why planning like this is really helpful.
100% agree with her on all of that. You can always build into your itinerary free time and stuff too, where if breaks are needed, you can, and have like alternative activities in case you don't need the break for that time. So that's kind of what I do.
Plan your transportation. So aside from the aircraft, you might have buses, you might have boats, you might have other things. Again, this is important to know. How big are those seats? Are you going to need extra space? Communicate those with your tour providers before you even go, so you're not trying to be crammed into a bus in a place you don't really fit because you didn't tell them that you would like a little extra room. Again, it's just communicating and planning. That's all it is.
Something I do as a travel agent is read reviews, but I don't read reviews just on one site. I research the crap out of an experience, and then on top of like calling and talking to the tour company if you need information about it. This is something that you can do on your own as well. It just takes a lot of time, which is why people like to hire a travel agent for. But
the last thing I'm going to say in
yes.
the planning process is to learn a bit of the language of where you're traveling. It goes a long way in showing the people in that country that you value and appreciate their culture. Additionally, when you need help and you start by trying to speak to them in their native language, they're more likely to help you. A story that my friend told me, she's a French teacher. She said that the reason some French people think Americans are rude is because when a French person goes into a business, the first thing they do is say hello. In America, the first thing we do when we go to a business is just kind of say our order. So right off the bat, not knowing that cultural difference, you've already put yourself in the position of being viewed as rude because you're not aware of the culture and the language of the country that you're visiting.
Such good points for anybody that's traveling. And this kind of goes off to like the energy that you're giving off to. I also felt like being in a country and you're trying to speak the language. When I came back to the US and people were trying to speak English, like I had a whole different appreciation for people who English wasn't their first language, but they were trying to speak English, and working through that, it just, once you put yourself in that position too, like you have a lot more appreciation for other people doing it as well. So that's like one of the beautiful things about travel that I really like. Amazing advice. I love that.
Now let's talk about packing. Packing is critical when you're plus size because you don't have the option of rebuying in country most of the times. Yes, there are always plus stores. I found plus size stores.
I like shook my head like, but in the mindset of plus size, that's very true. And she brings up a good point. It might not always be as easily available or available
in Thailand and India, all over, but a lot of times you have to have those items shipped to you, or they may not have a ton of stock available. So I like to think about what are my essentials. And for me, the things I found I can never get in another country are underwear, swimsuits, and pants. So I make sure that I pack extra of those items because I know I can't replace them in country. I will say you can always find an oversized t-shirt. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, there will always be an oversized t-shirt for you. I
That's
literally
probably true.
have gotten a t-shirt in almost every country I've been to without a problem. The other thing to think about packing too is putting most of those items that you know are critical that you can't replace in your carry-on. You can buy more skincare, you can buy more makeup, you can buy all of those things. But if your luggage was to get lost in country and you didn't have underwear and you didn't have pants, you're probably gonna have a really hard time having fun on vacation. So make sure whatever's in your carry-on are those items that are essential to you.
And that's super solid advice, honestly. Like, I mean, for anybody that's traveling, kind of consider that as well. But as a plus size person and not necessarily having as much access to those items as you would need if you're especially going to another country, very, very good advice. I
One
like
item
it.
that's essential to me that I actually carry in my backpack and at arm's reach at all times is chafing stick. We've talked about this before in terms of like swimming, keeping the chafe from in between your legs. But just in traveling, it can be a godsend. Even on long flights, I like to put it in just because sometimes your thighs are sandwiched together and it gets a little hot and it just gets friction, right? Between these hot thighs. So with that friction, having that chafe stick on protects you and makes
My
sure
God.
that you don't ruin your vacation by taking a long flight. So just be prepared and always have chafe stick.
I just traveled too, and shaving that's a whole other different topic. And what all she's saying is so true. But I had like my backpack was like rubbing my shoulder. I don't know if it was like how I was carrying it or what I was wearing, was rubbing my shoulder and like rubbed it raw, which really painful actually. And it was kind of heavy. So that was part of it. And I've had for some reason my arm like rubbing against my side kind of had that same effect before too. It's so weird, but like little things like that can happen. It's quite
The
annoying.
last
So
item I'm going
being
to talk about in
prepared,
relation to
love it.
packing is shoes. So I have a rule, unless I'm shooting a lookbook somewhere, I only bring shoes that I can walk a mile in. And that's because you can't take a bunch of shoes, or you really shouldn't take a bunch of shoes when you're traveling. They just take up so much space in a suitcase. So I like to stick to my Tevas, my Hokas, and my Vionics. Those are shoes that I know will support my feet no matter how far I walk, and I can wear them with lots of different outfits. So I try to stick to the shoes that I know are gonna support me best and leave the more fashion forward items for events and stuff at home. Oftentimes I do throw one fun pair in there if we have a night out or something like that, but it's not an essential and you
Agree. Please, for the love of God, do not break in new shoes when you travel.
don't have to have it. Now we're going to talk about actually getting on a plane and flying somewhere. And this is the point where most people have the most anxiety. This is where I've had the most questions. So the first thing I heard from a lot of you is like, what do I do when I'm walking down the aisles? Am I going to be too big for the aisles? What's it going to be like? Here's my pro tip. If you are nice, and the key to this is being nice, that's an overarching theme here. If you go to the front desk, if you arrive a little early and ask to pre-board, they will let you pre-board. If you've purchased 2 tickets, you automatically get to pre-board, but if you're just nervous and want to have that experience on your own and have only purchased 1 seat, just ask to pre-board. That way you don't have to worry about anyone around you. You can walk through and you can do our second thing, which is ask for a seatbelt extender more privately, right?
This is a little my experience with this is coming from like one particular major airline in the US, but I think most airlines kind of go by this because it's more of like a FAA policy. If they ask for people to pre-board, they can't ask you, and this might be like an insider tip, so here you go. They technically cannot ask you why you're pre-boarding, because if you are someone that has a disability but don't appear to have a disability, them asking is still in violation of many different laws, or like asking you to prove it. And honestly, if I were in that position, pre-boarding is going to give you a little bit more time to get on board. There's not going to be that pressure to get in your seat, get down, get your luggage up. It's going to be a little bit more like relaxed. You can get on board, meet the flight attendants real quick, get your seatbelt extension if that's a concern for you. Just give you a little bit extra time to get settled in. That can help. I would just board like you know that you're supposed to board at that time. Speak with them ahead of time and just say, hey, I do need a pre-board, or is it okay if I pre-board with this flight? Of course, always being nice is going to go a long way. Approaching them with kindness is always going to be the best thing. I hope you guys get kindness back. You're not supposed to be challenged if you pre-board, as far as I know. and this is me working in the industry, even working gates. If someone pre-boards, then you let them pre-board. If you feel like you can board with everyone else, do it. But if you do really need that extra time, it's not a big deal. Pre-board. You can speak with them ahead of time, say you need to pre-board. They should let you.
Since nobody else is on the plane other than
I'll say
maybe the
about
couple other people that pre-boarded, some who might be in a similar situation to you, you can conveniently ask for a seatbelt extender, and it's really not a big deal because it's, private.
If you need to ask for a seatbelt extension with people around, if you're worried about what the flight attendants do not care. The flight attendants don't care. Trust me, I've gotten seatbelt extensions for people. Couldn't care less. We care about your safety. So we'd rather that you ask for the seatbelt extension than to be super uncomfortable during the flight or not be able to buckle your seatbelt, because that's not safe at all and illegal, actually. So we want you to have a seatbelt extension if you need it, and if you need it to be comfortable. I have never heard a flight attendant be like, oh my God, I need a seatbelt extension. No, I've never heard that. It's not a big deal. The biggest issue with seatbelt extensions, honestly, is finding them. It's more common than you think on airplanes. So people ask for them all the time. Trying to have enough is sometimes a big deal. That's if a flight attendant seems annoyed or something, that they're not annoyed over getting a seatbelt. I promise you, I've never heard that. I've hundreds and hundreds of flights, never seen a flight attendant get pissed over or like judge someone for needing a seatbelt extension.
I don't really care if people see I've asked for a seatbelt extender, but I know that's sensitive for some of you. So if it is, that's an easy way to kill two birds with one stone. You can walk however you need to walk to the seat without anybody watching, and you can ask for that seatbelt extender without any pressure. Now, one thing I will say about the seatbelt extender, don't buy it. I see all these people saying like, buy a seatbelt extender. Do not do that. Every plane's seatbelt is different, and your extender probably will only work once. Literally, I've been on planes about 5 or 6 times this year, and every single one had a different buckle. So it's just not worth your money. It's better for you to get more comfortable asking for a seatbelt extender. They're very readily available at this point than it is for you to buy one.
And I don't know if they all have different buckles, because they all need to be somewhat similar and have the same for safety, so people know to like lift a flap and get out. Unless like some international flights, she could be referring to international flights like in first class and have different. But I've also honestly haven't heard of people buying seatbelt extensions. No, you don't need to buy it. I wouldn't buy it. They have them on board. As I just said earlier, that they sometimes like run low on them. It is the airline's duty to provide it for you. So I wouldn't buy it. I agree.
There's 3 other things that I have not heard anyone talk about that have affected me personally on flights, so I'm going to talk about them. The first is if you buy 2 seats, especially when they're smaller, more regional flights, sometimes the buckle on the seat has a sharp edge. I've literally ripped my pants. Actually, I ripped them on my way to Orlando from these little sharp points. So I always bring a sweatshirt or something that I can throw over that point so I don't cut my pants and so it doesn't like jab me the entire flight. Now this is more just on the regional flights, but it is really irritating, and if you didn't know it was going to be there, it can kind of be a mood killer.
I've done that before too, where you just sit down on the seat wrong, or you're trying to like hurry and you sit down on the seatbelt, and I've bruised myself, or like the armrest or something. That sucks. Or like having to sit between the seats and having it dig into you the whole time. No, bring something so you can put in between. That's terrible.
The second thing is bathrooms. Now I know a lot of people just hold it, but when you're on a very long flight, that's not really an option. So for long haul flights, most of them, and I say most because it's technically all of them should have it, but we all know people break the rules. Most long haul flights will have a handicapped bathroom.
It's kind of a weird comment she made. We all know people break the rules. There's laws surrounding that. And if your airplane/airline is not providing accessible bathroom, I'm pretty sure that there has to be an accessible bathroom on board. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, it needs to be like wheelchair accessible. It doesn't necessarily surround like plus size people. There should be an accessible bathroom, even on a domestic flight, and it doesn't seem like it is. There are ways to turn the regular bathrooms into one giant bathroom. Most people don't know that. We can manipulate the doors and do it so that it turns into one big bathroom. And then international flights, they will have one, even if it doesn't look like it. Maybe this is what she's referring to. She doesn't think that it looks like there might be an accessible bathroom, but it actually is, because you can manipulate it and turn 2 into 1. Trust me, there's ways. And I guess I'm specifically referring to US flights. If it's a airline from another country, it's not necessarily a law, so keep that in mind for a lot of this stuff too. If I ever say like it's a law, I specifically mean the US.
These bathrooms are much larger, considerably larger than the smaller bathrooms you might be familiar with on regional flights. And those are the best places to go to the bathroom.
I would also recommend going up to the first class bathroom. They don't say that, but even if you maybe speak to the flight attendant ahead of time and just be like, hey, I'm more comfortable using the first class bathroom because of size. It's easier for me to use. Usually they can make an exception. There are sometimes laws that you have to use the bathroom in your cabin. So you might have to work around that, but you can always ask and see if that's an option for you too. I would say the first class bathroom is sometimes larger. It's not always.
And frankly, everybody wants to go to those bathrooms. So if you ever see a woman like go into the bathroom and come out like in a completely new outfit, she went to the handicapped bathroom. There's enough room to like literally change your whole.
If there's a larger bathroom and everyone's using that bathroom, that's the dirtiest bathroom always. That needs to clean the most. So it's not necessarily like the bathroom that everyone wants to use. I'll just say that.
Handicapped bathroom. And just ask where it is. It's usually in the middle of the flight and on the left-hand side, but some planes are different. And the last thing we're going to talk about in relation to all of this is if you're on a long haul flight, your feet are probably going to swell. I would recommend getting some compression socks. I really like Vim and Vigor. If you have plantar fasciitis like I do, I will link a pair that I like that just go over the foot and the ankle, and those have been a godsend for me in keeping swelling down. You don't want to start your trip off being swollen. It's not fun.
Again, anybody that swells, not necessarily plus size, compression is a good idea.
Now we're at our destination and we get somewhere and we're uncomfortable, right? Either the chair isn't right, or maybe the tour guide's walking too fast, or you just feel out of sorts. Advocate for yourself. And I know that's scary, by the way. I know that like, I just said that off the cuff, like advocate for yourself, but you have to. You have to advocate for yourself. In a video that you guys are gonna see shortly where we did like an AI inspired trip, I went to a restaurant and they brought out the devil plastic chair. And if you're a plus size person, you know about the saga that is the white plastic chair. And I literally just turned to the lady running the restaurant. I said, ma'am, I am so excited to eat here, but I don't want my memory of this restaurant to be me breaking this chair. Is there any way I could have one of the chairs from the inside brought outside? And she was like, sure, no problem. She thought,
I mean, that's like a really almost like fun way to bring it. I know that might be a really hard thing for people, but the way she just said that, how can someone say no to that? That was actually kind of sweet. That's great advice, I think, for a situation that could be potentially awkward.
it was hilarious, kind of laughed too, because the reality is, it's like those fears that you have, people in that country also have those fears, same fears as you. It's not like you as a plus size person have traveled somewhere else and no one else feels the same way you do. So you might as well just advocate for yourself. I have never been in a situation traveling where I haven't said something and the problem was immediately fixed. Literally. Especially around things regarding my weight, because most times hotels are just uninformed. They just don't know what to do. So if you tell them what to do, they'll just do it.
That I think is really good advice too. Telling them specifically what you need. In the hospitality industry, in the travel industry, people want you to be comfortable and have a good time. And it's the worst and really frustrating when someone says, you never did anything about this and I didn't like it, or I had a bad time because of this, but then no one said it during the experience. Like as a flight attendant, a lot of times if I would have known a situation that was happening and you tell me at the end of the flight, but if you would have told me while it was happening, I could have fixed that for you. So I think it kind of like applies to this, and I think it's really, really good advice.
A lot of people feel like, oh, I'm
yourself.
Being difficult if I ask for help. Look, you pay for this trip just like everybody else, and it's okay to ask for help and support.
It's all about how you bring it up.
Enjoy that experience just like everybody else. Also, sometimes these hotels and locations just don't think about plus size travelers because maybe they've never visited before. So by you asking, you're also creating a solution for someone else down the path.
Love that, and that's probably so true.
So I've been locations where I know somebody else has asked for a seat before because they've asked me proactively, hey, would you prefer a different seat? And I don't take that as offensive at all. I think, wow, these people have had a plus size person here before. Great, I don't have to ask for it. So you're creating a culture where those things are expected versus things you have to ask for. And so you're really passing on the ability to travel to somebody else. The last thing I'm gonna say about traveling, and this is the hardest part, but don't get caught up in what you think people are saying about you.
I feel like this is good advice for life, like no matter who you are.
Every time I travel somewhere more unusual, somewhere that maybe people don't travel on an everyday basis, like China or Myanmar or like South America, right? Places that aren't like Cancun or Bahamas, right? People are always like, those people are gonna be so mean to you because you're fat. I'm gonna tell you right here, that has never been my experience. The amount of people who have told me I was going to have a miserable experience in insert country name because I was overweight far exceeds the actual bad experiences I have in a country because of my weight.
So good to hear, especially if you're someone that's plus size and worried about that. In general, being a travel professional and hearing that other countries like haven't been what people said, because that's also been my experience. People, before I went to France, I had so many people say the French would be the rudest to you because you're American and all of this stuff. My experience with French people, it was the best. They were amazing and I loved them and I loved my experience in France. My experience couldn't have been anything further from what people had said that it would probably be. This is really, really good advice for anyone and really good that she can talk from experience
A
about
great
this for
example is when I
anyone
went
who
to
is
China,
traveling plus
everybody
size.
told me, oh, Chinese people are going to be very difficult on your weight. They're going to harass you for it. I had zero experiences. And I talk to people, man. Like I am out there. I put myself out there.
I feel like that's true. Like she seems like someone that's going to be talking and like interacting with people too. Her personality comes across that way, so probably very true.
This is my like closing statement, my last words. You will have the vacation you believe you deserve. So if you think that everybody's judging you and hating at you and looking at you, you're going to see that. And that's all you'll be able to see. But if you're going somewhere and you're thinking about connecting with the culture and getting to know people and seeing great things, that's what you're going to see and experience. It's your choice. So let the anxiety go. Sure, somebody's going to say something. As we covered, someone will always say something. But it doesn't matter. You got to get out there. You got to see the world. And that far exceeds what some idiot thinks about your body. And most of the time, we think people are saying things about us, and they're not. They're talking about their coworker or their buddy or their friend. One time I had a person call me big in China and they were saying that I was big and beautiful. And I was like, I am. So again, you will have the vacation you choose to have. You will have an experience in the world based on how you see the world. And that's just how it is. So try to keep yourself focused on the good and let all the crap fly away. And you'll have an amazing trip. Now, if you have any other questions.
Okay, that wraps it up for Glitter and Lasers adventures for her tips on traveling as a plus size woman. I loved the way she ended that. It's so true for anyone that's traveling. Like, you need to go into it with a good attitude, connect with the culture. Everything she said is great. If you are someone that's traveling plus size, really give yourself props because it's not easy to travel. And then on top of it, having some more challenges like physically is tough. And the fact that you're putting yourself out there and getting out there, seeing the world puts you that much further ahead than anyone that's going to judge you for that. We will definitely review more of her videos because they relate to topics that I think anyone can apply, not necessarily someone who's plus size. And I kind of want to see her on some of her adventures. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as I did, and hopefully I was able to add a little bit of advice in there for you as well. Please go ahead, like this video. Don't forget to go ahead and check out Glitter and Lasers Adventures on her channel. Check out her video as well. Again, it's linked in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.